After e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, white plays bishop e5, and we're playing the Rossolimo. So black can play this move, knight to d4. This is fairly popular. It happens at pretty much every level, except probably like Super Grandmaster level. This never happens. So how do we deal with this? Knight takes, and after pawn takes back, it's white will have to play c3. It's very important here. It can look very natural to play d3, something like this, but like you just lose the bishop. So be careful and just play c3. It's a good move because also you will have possibilities to go back to c2. It depends on how it goes. Now here in this video we're going to go through this annoying variation, which is the main move that black plays when they play e5. The idea is to leave the pawn in d4. Of course black doesn't want to do the favor of taking the pawn here because that will give you just an excellent development. So after e5 takes and after pawn takes back, and this game is not supposed to be good, so let's see how to punish it. White castles, and the idea is to play d3, knight d2, knight f3, and then take the pawn. We're going to go through bishop e7 now, right? Because it makes perfect sense to develop the bishop there. There will be no other squares to put the bishop. They often play this move, bishop to c5, the idea of going back to b6 and then keep supporting this pawn because it will be attacked at some point. So let's quickly go through this, and then we're going to go through the other line, the more important one. So bishop to c4 now is the move. Start putting pressure on f7, and after let's go through this. This is a blunder, right? So let's analyze this. It's a perfectly normal looking move, but this is a blunder. e5 attacks the knight, and the knight is in trouble. Right now, pay attention to the fact that this thematic type of move d5 doesn't work. Usually because you take and then they take you back, but it doesn't work because of the bishop in c5. So see how this happens now. Pawn takes the piece and black takes the piece back. So now we attack the rook. The only move for black to save the rook is rook to g8, and now queen h5 attacks the bishop and also threatens to take h7 and win the rook. There's no escape already. Black's best move according to the engine is rook to g7, right? So it gives you the piece basically. There was going to be nothing else to do after queen h7. In this position, d5 is not possible. Knight e4 is not possible because d3 traps the knight. And after knight to g8, white continues with queen to h5 attacking f7. And either g6 or queen e7, the moves are going to be pretty similar. So queen e7 develops a piece and protects f7. Either way, we're going to go on with d3. And after g6, to kick the queen away, queen to f3, still pressuring f7. And white has a simple plan of playing knight d2, knight e4. Let's play a bunch of best moves from the black player, or some of the best moves as well, to see how this endgame is going to be played. So after rook to b8, best move by black will be b5 here. White continues with knight d2, and after b5, white plays the excellent move bishop to d5, still staying on this diagonal whilst also stopping the idea of playing bishop to b7 by black. So now we have two pieces attacking b7. So after bishop to d5, black's best move is f6. Let's just remember that if black plays like knight h6, for example, moves like knight e4 will come with an attack on the bishop, with an attack on such an amazing squares, and also the bishop will come with an attack on the knight. Let's look at f6 anyway. And now white continues with knight e4. The position is like evaluated by now +7 or something. I'm just showing you to see how pretty much this the weaknesses of the black player have appeared. So this bishop can't develop. Bishop a6 is completely useless. The knight can't develop anywhere. The rook is stuck, and the king is in danger. Whereas white king is completely safe. Besides, a move like rook e1 is coming very soon, so it's going to be game over soon. If black takes the pawn in e5, or if it doesn't, well, what else? There's really nothing to do here. d6 can't really happen because it's just too much attack on these squares, especially f6. So after pawn takes, you just complete development bishop to g5. There's nowhere to put the queen except, well, let's say f8, for instance, trying for a swap. If the queen suggests a swap, then queen to g3, attacking e5, and after d6, it looks like maybe black can survive, but white plays the stunning move f4. And the idea is to take the pawn with an attack on the rook, and even if the pawn takes back, then you can take in f4, and after queen to g7, the rook comes to e1, development is complete, and it's game over very soon. So let's make a recap, and then we will go through the other line, the one with bishop e7. So knight to d4, this move, you take it. Pawn takes, and now c3. Careful not to play d3. And after e5, take, and white castles. So let's go to the more normal move, bishop e7. And by the way, you realized in this video that of course I'm not going to cover every line, but I mean all the more main lines, because bishop to c5, for example, we went to knight f6 before, which was a normal looking move, but it was actually bad. I could have also gone to knight e7, but I'm just going to cover that in the next video, so make sure to stick to this channel so we can cover that very soon. Right now I'm going to go through bishop e7, so let's look at this idea, this setup, and how to go on. White plays d3 now, and now we're going to look at two ways to develop this knight, either f6 or h6. Also, the black player is never going to be able to castle this side, the queen side. It would be insane, and it's also just very difficult to make it happen. So after knight f6, e5 once again, and now after knight to d5, queen to g4 is the crucial move to remember, and this is a fork. You're winning a pawn. So by the way, castle cannot happen now because bishop h6 just wins the exchange, obviously, and threatens mate. So black has to give up the exchange, and after g6, in this case, instead of castling, white takes the pawn in d4. So let's see how to continue this endgame. Well, we're attacking the knight, and it can't really be defended. So after knight to b6, looks like a normal move, and it's kind of, I mean, what else to do? Knight to b4 would have been kicked out, obviously, and the knight couldn't go. Yeah, it could have gone to c7 as well with an attack on the bishop, but we'll see a similar pattern now. White plays knight to c3. Either way, so even if the black knight had gone to c7 with an attack on the bishop, the best move is knight to c3. So we want that to happen. This is because the d pawn is weak, it's isolated, and the knight in b5 will be really strong for several reasons. Anyway, let's go through knight to b6 line. So the move now is knight to c3. It would have been the same even with knight c7. After castling, white continues with bishop to h6. It's completely ugly for the black player to continue this game. After rook to e8, saving the rook, white continues with knight to e4. This is possible because the knight is not in c7, but it's in b6. If the knight had been in c7, yes, you place the knight in c3 to protect it, but then you can also play a move like bishop to a4, and then save the bishop on this diagonal, so the knight in c7 becomes not effective at all. But we're also going to cover a line with that at some point. Anyway, the knight now goes to e4, and let me prove a point. The point is that this bishop is not important anymore. After a move like pawn to a6, white's best move is bishop to c4, and it's a tremendous bishop, but yet we're able to give it. We really don't care about it. After knight takes, pawn takes back. So it looks like now the black player has got the bishop pair and will be able to develop both bishops. And if he gets to save his king, then this will be a fair endgame for both. But still, after b5, best move, white continues with e6. And this was a crashing move. The best move by black, according to the engine, is f6. We're going to cover that in a minute. If black plays instead something like bishop to f8 to stop the checkmate in g7 from happening, white takes the pawn, king takes. Well, because otherwise we had the rook, so he had to take. And now knight to d6 check. Two things can happen here. If bishop takes, queen check in g7 and king e6, and then rook e1, it's going to be checkmate very soon. And if instead, after knight d6 check, the black player goes to g8, then bishop takes bishop. And here you have the threat of a fork, queen check, and then also taking the rook. So after king takes, things don't change much because of check, and then king moves, and then knight takes rook is the best move. Queen cannot take back because you can skewer the king to the queen. So in this position, the best move by black is f6. But even then, queen to d5 is the best move by white, and we're attacking the rook, and the game is so compromised. We're also threatening to take the pawn with an attack on, with a discovered check and attack on any of these pieces. And the best move according to the engine is bishop to b7, which stops that from happening, and black literally gives up a piece. This is the best that black can come up with. And after the best move, take the pawn in e6. White continues with c5. This pawn is protected by the knight, and the knight cannot be misplaced from that square where it's protecting this passed pawn, because the moment this bishop moves, you can move the knight, for instance, and then the queen will have access to the checkmate square. The best move by black according to the engine once again is queen to c8 now, and white continues with queen to b6. We have the initiative, so we don't need to trade, and we have also a massive advantage. We're just going to connect the rooks, bring the rooks to the 7th rank, and that's going to be it. There's no way out of this. We're going to go through bishop to d8 here, attacking the queen. So if rook to b8, then the best move is knight to d6, attacking the queen and the rook. Rook takes queen, then we just take the queen. And yeah, there's nothing here. The rook has to go back because it's being attacked, but then you just trade and you go win the endgame. So in this position, let's just go through bishop to d8. Now queen goes to d6. And after bishop e7, attempting maybe a repetition, well, queen to g3 is the key move. This bishop can never leave this diagonal because of knight f6 making a fork. And white is looking forward to protect the pawn with the rook and then advance the knight to d6. If black plays this move, like queen to d7 for instance, then rook a to d1 is the best move, and after queen to c6, attacking the knight, white continues with queen to f3, threatening a discovered check, and there's really no other moves that the black, even the engine, can come up with because there's just nothing. We have a double attack here anyway, and much more material. So now I'm just going to quickly give an insight on how to play with the knight h6 variation, and then we're going to continue in the next video very soon. Knight d4 is taken, pawn takes, and then c3, and after e5, take, and now castle, bishop e7, d3, and knight h6. This knight is taken immediately. Now you may argue that this looks like a bad capture. I've lost games where such structure was made on purpose by the opponent because that gave him a very strong rook. But anyway, bishop c4 is the best move now, putting pressure on f7, and after rook to g8. Why does this not work? Well, because of knight to d2, and now black's best move, according to the engine, is king to f8. Obviously, it's kind of the best way to make the king safe. And white's best move is king h1 to get him away from this bad diagonal, also to push f4 and so on. After black plays d6, once again the best move, still playing the best moves but in a losing defense because it's not a good defense, f4. And white will carry on by swapping central pawn like e5 for example and have an attack on f7. Bishop to g4 is not a problem, it's met by queen to b3, attacking the pawn and also putting more pressure on f7. So white is winning a pawn. And so if bishop to h5, protecting this, and white plays queen to b7, it's not a poison pawn. After rook to b8, it looks like the black player is getting some compensation, putting the rook in the second rank, but there's nothing. There's really nothing. White continues with queen to d5, and rook to b2 doesn't make sense because, yeah, you take the bishop and black cannot take the knight because you still have the mate. And so here the white player will be able to win this bishop. There's no way to save the bishop and the checkmate threat. Bishop g6 will be met by f5. When the bishop goes to h5, you're not attacking it anymore, but you have f6 with an attack on the bishop and an attack on this one.